All right, we're recording. Welcome everybody to the June 6th API Machinery SIG meeting. We actually got a longer agenda than we did the last few days, so let's get right to it. First up is I wanted a flake report. I didn't warn people that this was on the list, so let's see. I know Jenny and Howie and I think Jordan have been working on flakes, so maybe we can hear what the status is. Go ahead, Howie.
So there was a deadlock in garbage collector periodic resync mechanism that can cause garbage collector to hang. And on the test grids in past 2 weeks, all the test failure that involves garbage collector failure has that deadlock triggered, and the fix was merged 2 days ago.
Okay.
Jordan's PR. I copied the issue number.
Thanks.
So
yeah,
we shall see the how it goes.
Okay. Cool. Next, test setup failures. I see somebody filled out the bullet points.
Yeah, that was me.
Okay.
So we're seeing two kind of categories of test flakes. One is failures at the beginning of API Machinery owned tests that are just in the setup phase, like create a replica set and wait for it to create a bunch of pods. And then we were going to go do garbage collection tests on it, but the test is actually failing in the setup step.
Mm-hmm.
And I've spent a fair amount of time trying to figure out what's going on here, and haven't had much success. There's nothing obviously related to garbage collection or API Machinery at all, really. It's in the setup phase of the test. And similarly for the aggregated test, it's running a deployment and waiting for it to complete and then getting into the body of the test. And we're seeing fairly significant numbers of flakes in the setup step. So I don't know if that's something that we should reach out to SIG apps on, or if it's a systemic, like watches are slow and it's like a scalability thing. I'm not sure.
Okay.
The next two bullet points are ones that are actually appear to be things we need to drive. And so I linked to the triage boards. I've dug into both of those a fair amount. We tried to add, I know Jenny added some more logging output to the first, and I added more logging output to the second. And we're still not having a lot of success in driving those to ground. But those are ones we need to stay on. Okay,
yeah, I think we should definitely stay on top of these, or people will be unhappy with us. It's totally valid to pollute the SIG API Machinery Slack channel with running commentary on these things. Yeah. Okay. If more eyes are useful, please feel free to ask. Okay. Let's move on. I wanted to give a short update on the Apply working group. We are nearing a alpha quality thing. There's still going to be a lot of stuff to fix between alpha and beta quality. Since I'm expecting to be out for a while, I think the team is going to focus on dry run because it's necessary for Apply overall. And there's, I think, pretty low risk of like complex technical decision going wrong. That's probably actually appropriate to go into master, but since master is going to be closed for feature for freeze for a while, we'll probably put it into the feature branch and then merge into master once it's open again. Yeah, so I just thought I would mention this. Any more comments on Apply? All right, Mike, you want to ask us about storage space?
Yes, I see someone actually answered the question yesterday. I'm a little surprised Slack didn't notify me, but anyway, the other half of my question is really about etcd, and I don't know if anybody knows the answers to these questions, but it looks like my questions are now for etcd. So I posted on etcd dev. I can put in the Slack channel my question. I don't know. I'll just try reading it here, see if anybody thinks that this is a useful forum for discussing it.
Yeah.
It seems like something that users of SD would want to know, and I didn't find it. Maybe I'm just missing something. But this is a planning exercise, right? So I'm planning for a workload. Suppose I can estimate that there's going to be a stream of writes. Presumably each write is characterized by a revision number, a key, and a value.
Mm-hmm.
I'm presuming that so my question is, I'm planning for database size. If I know my workload, can I predict what the database size is going to be? I'm assuming that all that goes in the database is writes, not reads or other transaction details, but I don't even know that.
I think, yeah, Joe, do you want to?
Sorry, I was typing.
What all, we're trying to plan etcd database size.
Yeah.
Do reads take up database size? I think the answer is a very tiny amount.
They take up a very small amount.
Maybe we should get
unless your read rate is extremely high. Linearizable reads do get written to the wall log, but they typically don't take up much space. So I would mostly ignore them, and the wall logs get rotated at a pretty tight band, so their size usage should be relatively.
But
so in etcd, there are three things I find stored on storage. There's the write-ahead log, the snapshots, and the DB.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I was focusing on the DB part of it.
Yeah. So and the question is, how big can it be?
Yeah. How can I predict? How do I predict how big my DB is going to be?
Your DB is it's actually pretty simple. So it's the size of the objects in it multiplied by the copy on write effect of your compaction interval. So in Kubernetes case, it would be hard to do it unless you have a dominant object. So in one use case where we had like nodes that were large, and those would be written at a pretty high rate because of heartbeats, those dominated space, and we could basically calculate it based on that.
So yes, let's just go through. I mean, obviously with a mix, there's a mix, but let's just go through it for one object type.
Yeah, so for that, if you have like say you have a 2 kilobyte node object and you have 1,000 nodes, then that's roughly 2
megabytes there.
Couple megabytes there, and then if you write them once every 10 seconds and your compaction interval is 5 minutes, you just do the multiplication. You can figure out that size.
Well, let me make sure I understand what to multiply. Right, so Kubernetes every 5 minutes in the default configuration, every 5 minutes Kubernetes is going to do a compaction to the revision that was current 5 minutes ago. So
right.
just before that compaction, you have 10 minutes of history.
That's correct.
So if yes, let's just take, say, a nominal cluster size, say 5,000 nodes. They're heart beating once a second, so that's 500 updates a second.
Mm-hmm.
Is it just a matter I have 600 seconds of 500 writes a second of a 2 kilobyte object?
Yep, it's that simple.
Experiments show no, that the database also seems to depend not only on the history, but the current contents. Right? If there's 1 million objects and I only wrote 10 of them in the last 10 minutes, there's still going to be a lot of database.
Oh yeah, well that's the database file does not automatically size itself down. So the way
yes.
So that's probably what you're mentioning. Yeah, that's an effect, right? If you have a lot of activity and you grow your database size and then it shrinks back down, what you'll have is a mostly empty database with mostly free pages, but it won't actually size it down unless you defrag it.
No, actually, that's not the issue I was trying to refer to. Let me try again.
You're saying even
suppose that I've been creating nodes at a rate of 10 a second all day, and so in the last 10 minutes,
Sorry, I think we lost you there.
So the storage space has got to include that 860,000 that exist, and not only the 6,000 that was created in the last 10 minutes.
Yeah, it always includes current objects. Current objects never get compacted out.
Yeah,
one would expect that. Presumably the keys as well as the values are by object you mean key plus value.
So, yeah, it's fixed space.
Now, next question. For those, in my example, those 6,000 objects that were created in the last 10 minutes, are there 2 copies, one historical and one current, or just 1 copy?
It depends on your compaction, but compaction can reduce it down to 1.
Tell me, explain what you mean by that.
So if you haven't changed an object since if a historical object trails outside of the compaction window, it'll be compacted and only the current live object will still exist. And you would only have a version of that object.
So let me just repeat my example, and it's just part of the question. But if I just say I'm creating a cluster, okay, I'm creating a cluster, creating nodes 10 a second. Forget the heartbeats. Let's just say I'm creating. Just talk about creates for a minute.
Okay.
I'm just creating nodes 10 a second. They don't heartbeat. Okay. So just before compaction, there are 6,000 nodes that I created in the last 10 minutes, and there's another 800. Say at the end of the day, another 856,000 nodes that I created before the last compaction. So I understand that for the 854,000, there are just 1 copy. For those 6,000 that I created since the last compaction, do I have 1 copy or 2?
I am not totally sure what exactly happens there, but
you should only have 2 if they are edited after created, right?
Yeah, if there was any action on them, I mean, it's just from an etcd perspective, there would only be 1 in rest unless some additional write.
Yeah. So really the question is, does Kubernetes upon a post do a write and then an edit? And the answer,
no, I know it doesn't.
It shouldn't unless like you're.
No, I've measured it. It doesn't.
Yeah. So there, I
would
be very surprised if you wrote and then got 2 copies in the etcd database.
But are you seeing 2 copies in the database, or what are you seeing?
I'm not sure. I don't have clear evidence on that because I'm doing mixed workloads. I started by asking just about pure creates. I think I've gotten an answer and it's plausible. So now let's move on to updates. So suppose that I'm, let me make an example here. Well, let's try asking. So I think so if there's an update since the last compaction, say for a given object, there's 1 update since the last compaction. There are now 2 copies of that object in the DB, right? The version before the update and the version after.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. And if there are 3 updates, again, all those since the last compaction, all those versions are in the history because they have to be.
Yeah, and they're all full copies. It's copy on write, so they're full records.
Okay. Now let's do deletes. How much space does a delete take up?
A delete is basically just a tombstone.
How big is that?
I don't know exactly, but it's a couple bytes.
So okay, very small.
Plus a few bytes.
It's pretty small.
Okay.
But that doesn't remove any copies from previous updates.
Yeah, and all the history is still there.
Right, it's still subject to the compaction window, but a delete will compact away, correct?
Yeah, and it will all compact away.
Okay, very good. I think I've gotten my answers. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. And as an aside, one of the things we've been looking at over on the etcd side is what is a maximum DB size before you start using degradation. Historically, etcd has recommended 2 gigabytes, which I think is way too small. We are going to, in the very near term, increase that recommendation to 8 gigabytes, which we know is reasonable, and we're looking at the performance at 16 and 32. Beyond that, your actual physical memory limit becomes a constraining factor. Kind of, at that point, we wouldn't push this to like 256 because most machines are going to have less than 64 gigs of memory, and once you hit that limit, performance degrades dramatically.
Okay. Actually, one other follow-up to my question. it seems like the question I was trying to ask is something that should be documented. Doesn't this seem like something that should be reasonable to be in the etcd documentation?
Yeah, I think there needs to be a little more clarity on how you reason about the space and on some of the assumptions that people make about it. It's not entirely intuitive. I think that's a good recommendation. I can take that to the etcd team.
Okay, thank you.
Cool.
Is that the documentation on etcd side or on Kubernetes side?
I believe etcd should document that.
etcd should document the basic math that we were just describing, and on the Kubernetes side, it's harder to say exactly how much space you're going to take, depending on scale dimensions. But
there's
could be some.
There's some like complicating factors, like a long going read can hold various parts of the database open and cause fragmentation, basically, if I understand correctly.
Yes,
Joe is nodding.
Yeah, there are some corner cases there. Those might be some good things for us to dig in on the etcd side.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Phil, did you say you had to go? Do you want?
Oh, that would be great if it's fine if you want to. Yeah, that'd be.
Okay. I'm gonna switch the order here because
I didn't put that in time either.
Here for the whole time. And the topic, get consensus on creating a repo to break out generic controller library from KubeBuilder.
Yeah. So the context here is KubeBuilder, a sub-project of API Machinery, focused on building libraries and tools to simplify the user experience, increasing the raw API Machinery. There's other projects such as Operator SDK and a couple Operator Kit projects that have tried to build similar libraries. And so one goal is to, we talked with the Operator SDK folks working on that, and came to the conclusion that like what we're trying to build is actually very, very similar to one another, and that we could build a solution that actually meets both of our needs and that we could each build on top of. And so we'd like that code to be moved out of the KubeBuilder repo, so KubeBuilder could be like a project that consumes libraries and maybe adds porcelain on top of a standard set of libraries that any SDA could use. The other goal is that certain projects, there's a number of projects who said, hey, we actually just want to consume the libraries. We've already written the project structure or something like that, but would like to switch over to libraries without using all the tools in the whole framework. So specifically, we want to break out a set of libraries into another repo. There's also possibly in the future, we may want to create additional repos if that makes more sense for the structuring of the libraries themselves.
I don't personally have any objection to this, and in fact, I think to continue to scale, the SIG needs to delegate more to sub-projects and like treat those as first-class citizens. So if you think that makes sense, I don't have any like procedural objections or other sorts of objections. I would want you to make sure that the sub-project list is up to date and the SIG YAML file, wherever that is.
We are creating like a name of a repo. Does anyone from the SIG feel that like they want to review like the naming conventions? Maybe we're establishing stuff for these repos first to have.
You mean for the repos themselves?
Yes.
What name are you thinking of using?
We're thinking about dash platform as a suffix, so starting with controller dash platform.
I hope that works out, because that's a great name to have. It'd be a shame to use that name and then have it not work out.
And have it not work out. I don't know how to respond to that. But we were thinking like we could have, Solly's been working on logging tools, actually, we were thinking of putting like logging dash platform or maybe common platform, and having the dash platform suffix be a way of saying these are libraries you can use when building your stuff.
Yeah, I don't know. Does anyone have thoughts on that?
So I already sent out an email. I can send up a follow-up email with saying like there's been lazy consensus achieved in this meeting. no objections, and then setting a deadline maybe a Friday if no one has come up with a reason that they don't like the names.
Yeah, that sounds fine.
Great.
I don't think anyone objects. So.
Thank you for moving those things around.
Yep. Okay. Last item on the list, a name I don't recognize, about the dynamic auditing proposal.
Yeah, hey, I'm Patrick. I'm with Heptio. We're trying to push through a dynamic auditing proposal to dynamically configure the advanced auditing features. This would be primarily owned by SIG Auth, but we are looking for participation from you all here. And that's been one of the asks from SIG Arch as well, as that you all are involved. So I'm just trying to bring awareness to the topic and see if we could possibly get some reviewers on the documents and approvers potentially from the SIG as well.
All right, so you're looking for reviewers and or approvers?
Yep.
And this is, this is, okay, is there a specific item that we want? So presumably you're not asking for review of the API because this group doesn't review APIs. You're asking for review on what exactly?
Basically, Brian Grant from SIG Arch was asking that we have you all involved in this, and in the capacity, I'm not totally clear on your entire charter and what you would cover, but he seemed to believe you all should be involved as a sub-approver. It wouldn't be in here, it'd be in the main comments section.
Yeah, I think like the audit stuff in general is kind of in a weird place halfway between machinery and auth. Like auth cares about the auditability aspects of it, like for enforcing policy and things like that, and machinery cares about it because it threads through all the machinery.
Sure. Yeah, because we have to live with the code.
Yeah. So I know the dynamic aspects would impact it.
So from the comments Brian has made here, it looks like, okay. He wants conversion on the webhooks and he's worried about the API. Let's see. Yeah.
Yeah, I was trying to get kind of agreement on the use cases before we dove into like what's the best API to accomplish those use cases.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think the project overall is, so there's two things going on here. There is just getting APIs reviewed in general. I think the project is super bottlenecked on there. I think honestly Jordan has been doing far more of those than is fair. So yeah, that's not healthy for the project. The other thing, if there is a webhook, is this adding a net new webhook?
No, so you can already configure audit webhooks. The configuration is
The configuration.
by static file passed in at start time. So this is wanting to make that dynamic.
So
or optionally dynamic.
Gotcha. So the problem here isn't adding a new webhook; it's making sure that the webhook configuration is like at least not completely alien to the admission control webhook configuration. Is that?
Yeah, and also I think adding the possibility for like not multiplexing, but I believe today you can only configure a single audit webhook, and so this would be presumably maybe that's part of kind of getting back to the use cases. Letting you create more than one with different verbosity and focus and filtering and yeah. So
I wonder if this is a case where we should set up like a sub-project or something where we could have one person who where we centralize all knowledge of webhooks or a couple people, because we do in fact have a lot of webhooks and they are configured in different ways. So that may be something to keep in mind. But okay, we should have a reviewer on this KEP. Over here, I can imagine asking Chow to take a look, or so Chow's not here, or you.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Definitely ask the person who's not here. We can go ahead and commit them.
Yeah. Yeah. Chow has lots of time. Okay. I will get both of those people to take a look, and Jordan is actually in the API approvers list. So once the design is further along, then Jordan or somebody else can like work on the API.
Yeah, and Tim Allclair over on the auth side is mostly driving the audit work, and so he's been involved as well. So
Okay.
Tim and I from auth, and then if you want to tag in the.
Okay. Yeah, I think Jordan, I'm gonna try and pull my weight on API reviews. So maybe we can find a couple more people, because I think there's too much stuff going on for one person.
Yes.
Yeah, and that way maybe you can like not have a heart attack.
That'd be awesome.
Okay, I'll add that in the notes here. That's I can't type Chow's GitHub username. Yeah, I can never spell that one. Okay. Okay, sound good?
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay, and we are halfway through our allotted time, but it is nice to stop the meeting here if we don't have anything else. Does anybody have anything else?
Maybe circle back to the test flake stuff, just to kind of figure out who's taking point on those.
Yeah, should we assign some action items? Who wants to talk to SIG apps about these test setup failures?
The replica set one is probably clearer, so I can take that one. So that was the replica setup for garbage collection.
You know, it's okay to let somebody else do something once in a while, Jordan.
Yeah. I'm
okay.
happy to.
If you want it. Geez, okay. Test failures and orphaning. Who is currently? I should open it up. Is anyone currently working on this guy?
I know Jenny had added the logging around it. I think she was trying to dig into it, but I don't know if she still is.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll look at it.
Look at it. Okay. Look at it is so like easy easy to promise. Maybe you can also escalate or say something in the Slack channel if there's like nothing obvious to do, or yeah, something like that, just so it doesn't get dropped. Okay. There's a C in there, right? Okay, and the aggregated API server test flakes. Aggregated APIs. Is this the one where yeah, we were trying to promote that to like be a conformance test, and it turns out it's flaking, which doesn't really help our case.
So there are two pieces there. There's the deployment not becoming ready. I'm less sure that that's a SIG apps issue. That actually just kind of started cropping up. I added some logging to try to dump information about what was going on inside the pods. But if someone who has access to the stack driver stuff where the container logs get scraped could take a look at it, that might be more helpful. I know Walter had done that a few times, but I think that might be Google internal still.
Ah, yes. Walter was out on vacation, but he's back today.
Welcome back.
Thank you. I see an @Chef Taco going in.
I hope it was a good vacation because you're gonna need it.
Oh wait, okay. Sorry, Walter.
All good.
Yeah. Okay. Did we get everything in there?
Thanks. So.
Well, so wait, Jordan, you said there was a deployment not ready was one issue. Did we have any?
Deployment not ready was one. I added more logging around the case where the deployment went ready, and then the thing hitting the service endpoint was just like getting a 404 back inexplicably. I added a fair amount of logging around that, and we're still seeing the failures, and the logging didn't turn up anything that seemed useful. Jenny saw some denial errors, but those are consistent on good runs and bad runs. They're not; those don't seem relevant, but I might be wrong.
Okay.
I think those were from a controller trying to get discovery from it, but it was unrelated to the test. I think it didn't.
Yeah, like the OpenAPI aggregator tries to aggregate stuff, and I don't even think this image has OpenAPI. So, yeah.
Yeah, I have seen. There is a issue floating around with somebody complaining that if the metrics API server isn't healthy, well, the condition that I'm worried about is if the metrics API server isn't healthy, then the aggregator can't aggregate the OpenAPI doc, and that somehow prevents it from serving requests from API servers that are healthy. At least that seems to be the claim in that issue. I'm not sure if that's really the case, but if it is, we should fix that because that's not good. A failure in one API server shouldn't spread to make more of the API unavailable.
Yeah, I think it was during registration. At one point, there was a synchronous path that, like on the first hit, could block aggregation. So existing things would keep serving fine, but if you registered a new API service while the OpenAPI aggregator was trying to do the first hit on one that was failing, other things would get blocked from registering.
That shouldn't happen. If you have reference to that, Jordan, I can take a look at that.
Yeah, this was a while ago that we tracked it down, and I thought we resolved it. So that.
Yeah, I thought so too, but I saw some recent comments on this like yesterday or the day before.
So if you just
I
give
think
me the issue number.
I think you've already left comments on the issue, so it's probably sitting in your email.
Okay, I'll check my email.
Yeah, I don't know if that will help you find it or not. It doesn't usually help me find it. Yeah, I think we have a general like thing with discovery where like parts of it can fail, but that doesn't mean that the result you got back is not useful unless the very thing that you needed failed.
Yeah, all of the OpenAPI aggregation should happen in its own thread, in its own controller. It should not block anything.
Yeah, I wonder if we could like
think
about handling all such things in the aggregator and make sure that it doesn't give partial discovery failures to people. I don't know, maybe a thought for the future. Since clients seem to have great difficulty handling the case where like half of your discovery worked and there's this one endpoint that flaked for whatever reason. Arguably, it's our fault for splitting discovery into multiple API calls, but it's a fix for another day. Okay.
All right. Thanks.
All right. We'll give you all a few minutes back. Thanks for coming.
Can I ask just one more follow-up question on that database sizing thing?
Yes. Sure.
The answer given was there's just a tiny amount of bytes for each read. So does that mean for each key? Presumably the keys involved. I think guess what that probably means is each key is there but not the value. Is that what's being said here?
No, it's the actual act of reading. So when you do a consistent read, part of that is ensuring that the etcd member returning the result is up to date with, has quorum. And so that involves writing something out to the wrap log.
So presumably it has to write the current global index.
Yeah, it just writes a normal raft entry and the operation it performs. So if you do a range read, it would only record the start and end of that range. Or if you did a single key read, it would only record that single key. So it's not.
I thought it actually got even more efficient as far as like if 10 read requests arrived within a certain window, it would batch those up and only put a single entry on the wrap log. Am I totally making that up? I thought that was part of why etcd3 was so much more efficient at quorum reads.
Yeah, I think that happens. There's also some ongoing work to try and make linearizable reads more concurrent, because right now they're still fairly lockstep. But yeah, there's some optimizations with that.
Okay, thank you.
Cool. All right. See you all in a couple weeks, or well, somebody will. Maybe I'll be out by then. I don't know. Oh wait.